It's a real shame that especially in Western society, we have this tendency to silo our subjects and disciplines. We need creative minds and engineering and science and practical abilities as well to bring it all together.
Kia ora e whakoutou, haere mai ki te kōrero te ara whānui ki te rangi, ko Oscar toko ingoa, ko pone ki toko whenua, ko tangata tiriti toko iwi, mihi nā tangata whenua o Aotearoa. I'm here today with Voice of Aroha and Charlotte. Kia ora, Charlotte.
Kia ora, Oscar. Nice to be here.
Kia ora, it's so good to have you here. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
And we have so much to chat about today. So I guess it makes sense for us to start where we met. We met at a Waiora course studying freshwater management.
That's right.
And we can dive further into that as well. But you've also had a career in the arts and the interface between arts and science. And you've travelled on the international stage. So there's many things that we'd love to chat to you about today. Would you like to start how we met?
Yeah, well, Oscar, we met at the Waiora course, and we had an amazing, I remember so much of that really rich and wonderful learning experience. Our teacher Ihaya was amazing at being able to get us all together and basically create these wonderful environments for fantastic kōrero.
I loved the kōrero that we had.
Yeah,
it was so wide-ranging, it was so diverse across so many different topics, but over the course I felt like I learned so many different things. And you had just finished your Masters before that, right?
Yes.
And you did your Masters in behaviour change, social behaviour change?
Climate change, science and policy was the Masters program that I went through. And that was a really exciting time for me because I have, as you mentioned earlier, a background in the arts and culture sector. So to sort of morph or redirect myself into sort of the science faculty was quite a big change and a big leap.
Right. So did you go from an arts background into the science disciplines?
Yes.
How was that transition for you? Because those two worlds don't often collaborate smoothly with each other.
Well, it was terrifying, but
good on you for doing that.
Thanks. But I guess the catalyst for me doing that was a trip to India.
Right.
And I was fortunate enough to go and stay with some friends in India. And of course, that country is just amazing, and it's a bombardment, assault on your senses.
It's 9 out of 10 in every direction all the time.
Yes. And it's a country of real extremes, and you have this intense kind of beauty and then this full-on kind of pollution, and air quality is pretty poor and
you've got like
many
extreme
parts.
wealth on one side and extreme poverty in the same scope.
Yeah,
like right next to
side
each
by
other.
side.
Absolutely.
And so that coincided with my first solo painting show, and I was about to come back and work on a whole new body of work that was going to, be referencing my observations of India and my time there. And then I thought, is this enough? Is it enough to be representing and interpreting this nature and this part of the world and these people and places? And at that time I felt it wasn't. I wanted to affect change in a more direct way. So I closed the door of my studio and enrolled in the first intake of the Masters in Climate Change Science and Policy at Victoria University.
Wow, that sounds like a huge moment.
It was,
an epiphany via India to unlock a totally new direction and a totally new, I mean, you're a curious and inquisitive mind for a long time. A science framing of the world is quite a particular adjustment to them from a creative scope.
Well,
of your liberal arts background? Or?
Yeah, well, I can tell you right now that I did a lot of social science papers as well at university to coincide. I took papers just that would inspire and create the flow of ideas for my own creative art practice. But so I did lots of psychology, philosophy, feminist studies, English and sociology, and but going into more pure sciencey type environment is really different. And I can tell you, Oscar, I was the first and only fine arts graduate in that course during that year.
We need more people who can navigate both worlds, because they are both different worlds. They use different ways of exploring the world, but they both extend our insight in different ways. And I think they both have a lot to learn from each other.
I 100%. I agree with you. I think it's there's more commonalities than meets the eye, really.
Absolutely. They're both creative processes.
They are. They're both based in observation and interpretation, and they both, drive questions and seek answers.
I think they both reflect how we prioritize what is important. However, if we showcase that in art or if we focus that in science, we can reflect our values of what is important to us through both of those avenues.
Yeah, and in different forms, but in ways in which give the audience or publics the opportunity to really reflect on those ideas. So, I agree. I think that it's a real shame that especially in Western society, we have this tendency to silo our subjects and disciplines. And we do that at a really early age. Like by the time you finish secondary school, you've kind of already been channeled into, arts or science side of things.
Yeah, you've already had to prioritize your timetable either way.
And the other thing that has been my experience is if you show some kind of a creative ability, then you're sort of channeled down the creative path. And the same is true if you're strong in the STEM subjects, you're then channeled away from those art subjects and into the sciences. And really, I don't understand why these things have to be so separated and mutually exclusive to one another.
Yeah, the separation makes no sense. The space in the middle and the potential and the creativity to weave those
That's where the magic happens, right?
Yeah. That's where the innovation can happen. That's where the imagination can really thrive.
And you look at indigenous cultures. This is what they've been working in these models for millennia. Māori, for example, have always recognised the significance of connection.
Absolutely.
And across their knowledge systems. So it's not really a new thing.
It's not a new thing at all. And I think Indigenous knowledge has had a really amazing capacity to look at lots, multi-dimensional modelling and through their vocabularies and how they frame ideas. I think Western science understands things in isolation, but Mātauranga Māori and other Indigenous knowledge systems can understand a physical system and then the social metaphors and the cultural metaphors that help extend those lessons.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that it's that linking between other worlds capacity that I think science could reflect on more. Yeah. How, instead of studying how is everything so separate from each other, how do we use all of the tools that we've got to see as much of the picture as we can?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, in this world more than ever now, we need all brains, all perspectives on it.
All hands on deck.
And that cross-disciplinary way of working and incorporating ideas are really going to be the way that we can solve these challenging complex problems that we're faced with today.
Yeah. I think that cross-disciplinary approach is how we're going to get through this. And that's not to say that we all need to be specialists in everything, but we need to have the tools to, I do what I do and you do what you do and we can do what we do together, build all of those frameworks.
I think the core really is, we do need the level of expertise. We do need that kind of, deep dive understanding, that comprehensive
detailed
studying.
observation-based decisions.
But it's about how do we share and interweave those that knowledge and those ideas and understandings? How do we cross over with these and disseminate this these different ideas from these disciplines, and to really find out the bit, as you say, the magic stuff in between.
Yeah. I think that's fascinating. And how do we have the kind of cross-cultural fluencies to be able to dive deeper?
Yeah.
Like kaitiakitanga, I think, is another great example where like it's a word that is used a lot in a lot of different situations, but it's also a word that has deep resonance and social environmental responsibility and intergenerational understanding. Like there's some profound concepts involved in kaitiakitanga, and having the opportunity to dive deeper and to learn how to enact those so that we can be better ancestors for the following generations and leave the environment in better conditions and help all of the environmental systems along the way, not just our corner. Like all of those decisions over time frameworks or impact over generations. I think there's so many different tools that we can use to collaborate and deepen our insight, but for everyone.
Yeah.
When I was studying at uni, I did my honours in the cross-cultural management of groundwater, and one of the models I was researching was two-eyed seeing, like the idea of looking at a problem through at least like more than one world view, and then that depth of new knowledge that is revealed that was blind to both knowledge systems previously. I think is a fascinating idea to keep exploring all of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you think that response, or like that cross-disciplinary approaches, arts and science interfaces, how do you think that impacts climate, or like our response to climate? That's big. That's a big question.
How much time have you got? How does that the interdisciplinary approach impact climate?
Yeah.
Well, I'm a great believer, Oscar, that is the way forward. We need creative minds, and we need engineering and science and practical abilities as well to bring it all together. This is why I bang on about the siloing of subjects and disciplines, because we need to be able to see those crossovers. And
I've been thinking a lot about creativity and innovation being the potential between two known ideas. I think that's where science and arts can really help each other out. Like, arts can help science be more expressive and engage with different audiences and use different tools, and then the sciences can help give arts deeper meaning and deeper application and like real world resonances, and I think that would be a way of extending it from a kind of psychosocial experience to a physical experience. We were chatting earlier about the sculptures on the waterfront that they capture the wind and they generate and they light up, and it's like, can we take that a step further than just art to achieve a social need?
Well, you say just art, but what they do is they pique people's curiosities, and then people will look at that sculpture and think, well, how's that working? The kinetic component of that art. How is, and then before they know it, they're actually moving into a more science type understanding, or a curiosity even. And so I think
imagination, innovation, education, lead in with the arts.
Yes. And, I think the wonderful thing about the arts is that it's a way of delivering information and ideas, because it's trying to engage audiences on a cerebral but also an emotional level. And so, and that's when most of our learning is done, when we are touched, through our hearts and our minds. We're most open to receiving information and most open to new ideas, perhaps, when it touches us on an emotional level.
Absolutely. And when we listen openly and genuinely and respectfully to see what lessons can be learned from this, or how to apply these all these different strategies that are out there and all the different experience that's out there, and how to platform and storytell and share all of those different experiences that are out there. I firmly believe between all of us, we've got all of the tools and ideas that we need to to respond to climate. We just need to figure out how do we communicate to each other. I think the arts have an amazing role to play in that regard.
Well, I think it was really interesting. I was really blown away by learning about the physical basis of climate change and the chemical interactions between the ocean and the atmosphere in absorbing and releasing gases, and this kind of exquisite balance that creates the Goldilocks environment that enables all life on Earth. And it kind of blew me away. I thought it was astoundingly poetic.
Beautiful.
So,
like choreographed circulation.
yeah,
Beautiful,
it is.
beautiful parts of the planet system.
As an artist, I couldn't help but interpret these things, these concepts, these science concepts and equations in a really visual way. I firmly believe that the arts have a big role to play in terms of engaging people.
And representing that understanding. Because I think the graphs and the charts are great, and they represent a lot of mahi, but they're only useful if you know how to read them, and that's kind of preaching to an in crowd in some ways.
Yeah.
But I think art forms like visual art and performative art and like photography and all of the art forms, even architecture and engineering, like all of the art forms out there, I think they can really help us focus what is important to us. I think they can help us understand topics in different ways, but still increase our understanding.
Yeah, and that was really the focus, really, of my master's thesis. Was I was really interested in that disconnect between knowing about climate change and the lack of action of climate change. So I wanted to sort of really understand that, despite this growing awareness of the issues and better intentions and shrinking timescales.
And higher resolution data on the same story.
Yes, yeah. Emissions are still rising, not falling. And so with all of the national state of environment reports and information campaigns, why have we not, as one academic put it, why has this not resulted in an emergency of a sustainability
Apparently
ethic?
there was a climate emergency declared in 2019, but it's like the most chill emergency I've ever seen. It's like the most back to normal energy ever.
Yeah, and I guess what I discovered through doing sort of a deep dive into literature of behaviour psychology and climate change or science communication theory was that, this one-way transfer of knowledge transfer is actually not very effective. While it's a precursor for better understanding and behaviour change, it's not very effective at bringing it about, those things about.
Absolutely. I think a really important piece of that whole equation, we need to understand it, but at the same time, I think there's other ways that we can communicate it.
Yeah, there's absolutely no causal link with more information and more action. In fact, actually, the opposite effect can occur.
Yeah,
people can become climate fatigued, which we're seeing a lot of that. Yep, ambivalent, skeptical.
Yeah, absolutely.
So people are served better when they are given agency into their how they will make decisions about science challenges that intersect with their lives. So that knowledge sharing and knowledge building is they're far more effective models. Makes sense, right?
Absolutely. I think art and theatre have proven so many times, to foster that connection so quickly, and between strangers, between different communities, but there's spark and energy and momentum and social cohesion and vision that happens in art projects. A lot of the time, I get that that's not the standard model for every art project, but I think they do have a lot of collaborative tools and approaches to help us make these big decisions. How do we dream of our next innovations and our next solutions? I think the artworks and art can really platform that.
Yeah, and also community sort of grassroots, bottom-up kind of approaches. I think the arts are good at that because they've always had to operate in that space. Yeah. Bringing all of that local and knowledge and expertise that people have in our communities. Absolutely. I mean, we saw that at the Voice of Aroha Hui. What a mix of areas and expertise people came into that room with.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great example of
Yeah.
like we don't need one person to know everything. We need everyone to be involved, and then we've got all our bases covered.
That's it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But the other thing which is really important is the way in which we process information is combined with our worldviews, and they really
Absolutely.
shape how we process information.
Well, this is interesting. I think we live in the same world a lot of the time, but then it's our different values and knowledge systems and languages and ways of understanding that could lead us to ultimately living in different worlds. But I think they do equip us with different tools and different ways to frame a problem and then different solutions that are available. And if we pull our toolkits, then we've got all of the tools.
Yeah, absolutely. And also those people who are sort of instrumental in disseminating messages, or so it's not just sort of targeting your audiences to align with their worldviews and values, but also it's the messenger who is just as important. I mean, people are more likely to accept and or at least be open to discussion on climate change if that person is someone that is trusted or
Absolutely. And use vocabularies that you can resonate between you.
Yeah.
Like screaming jargon at people we've seen is not not the most effective way to do it. But I fully see that the arts help kind of pull on more of those emotional or psycho-spiritual elements that can inspire more action.
Yeah. You know, generally when you go to any art event, that is in most people's leisure time. And so people are relaxed and, you know, it's usually quite an unjudgmental environment that you're stepping into. And it's usually enjoyable, right? It's sort of
absolutely.
Entertainment.
Absolutely.
So I think it's a really powerful platform to be speaking about some really quite serious issues.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think all of the art forms, and the reason we need the arts is because it acknowledges all of those human elements and responses to all of these situations. Like climate change is massive. There's an enormous amount of emotions that come up with that, and theatre and the arts gives a acknowledgement and a platform to acknowledge the variety of different emotions, from the funny to the terrifying to the grief to the confused, way more than the science and the policy can. Like the science and the policy, like cut that out, you know?
Yeah. And you're not attached to any kind of party line. You know, you're not, you don't have to put a disclaimer necessarily on your work because you're not representing a government organisation or a company. So you've got that freedom of being able to poke around and provoke and
absolutely provoke and innovate and imagine, and like the social commentaries, like the arts have been the social mirror for progress and where we're at for centuries. I think like really diving into that heritage of the arts, I think is really, really exciting, and there's so much potential here, and we're lucky to live in such a creative capital. In Wellington we've got so many different art forms to pull from.
That's
so
true.
Many different perspectives.
Yes.
I love the variety of different people here. Like there's a lot of cross-disciplinary people, I think, in Wellington, both like artists and scientists and politicians, and juggling a lot of different worlds.
Yeah.
Would you have any advice in juggling different worlds or bringing worlds together?
I've been really privileged in all the roles that I've been in, that I've worked in this kind of cross-disciplinary way, and bringing worlds together. I mean, I would probably say that you know, the ability to listen is crucial, and hold back and observe, and then you know, if you don't understand something, go and find the right people and ask those questions. So, just the ability to be open and honest. Generally, I've found in my experience, people are really forthcoming.
Being open and honest and curious are really amazing ways to explore not only what you do know, but what you don't know, because you're not expected to know the answers, and you're allowed to get it wrong, but it gives you tools to kind of navigate that and then contextualize that, and then knowing which beats are, or which pieces are important to you, and then knowing how to find those pieces, or how to ask the next question to find those pieces, and then how to get those new pieces and then build more meaning, I think is a beautiful process. I think we've got so much we could chat about, and unfortunately we're running out of time today. So I've got our book that I need to ask you the question for, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So the question is a pretty deep question. Can you honestly rate your own knowledge and experience to prepare for the worst case scenario of climate and economic collapse?
Can I rate it?
Yeah. I guess, if there is a worst case scenario out there, how would you rate your knowledge and experience right now to respond to that, I think is what this question is trying to ask.
Oh, okay. Probably somewhere in between.
Excellent, excellent.
Somewhere in between not knowing anything at all and knowing something extremely well, being an expert in it. I would tell you what, Oscar, I would know who to go to ask more advice on the issues and situations that I didn't know about. So...
Awesome. Well, if there is a worst case scenario, I'm getting in touch with you for sure. Absolutely. For our listeners, bridge those worlds. We need all hands on deck. If you're a scientist or if you're an artist, collaborate with everybody, because we need everyone in this. And it's the only way we're going to get through this. So thank you so much. And
Thanks.
that's all we've got time for.
Kia ora.
I'll be interested to hear what you think in the comments.